Do you ever feel like you need to get out for a while just to clear your mind? One day that was how I was feeling, so I decided to go for a walk. It's often very relaxing being out amongst nature, so I headed for the woods. When I arrived there, as soon as I entered the woods, some birds scattered everywhere, making quite a noise. As I walked along, the path became a little narrow and was getting a bit overgrown in places, causing me to jump over some of the plants. Then I came to a clearing. There was a big stone cross in the middle. The cross had some markings on it, but they were impossible to read as the stone was so withered. It must have been very old. I could see a few hares running about, looking for shelter. There was lots of long grass and some nut trees in the distance, no doubt planted by squirrels that live around here. On the other side of the clearing, the pathway was quite overgrown. I started to wish I'd brought something with me to help clear the way. Farther along, the wood opened out a little and I could see squirrels running everywhere. They climbed the trees so easily and sometimes ran horizontally around the trunks of trees. There were so many of them that it's a wonder there's not more hazel trees around here. I could hear dogs some way off in the distance. I expect their owners taking them out for a walk. I bet the dogs love it out here, being able to run around amongst nature. A short moment later, I came to a large tree that had fallen across the path, no doubt blown down in a storm. This would take a lot of work for somebody to cut it up and leave by the side to rot down. Or maybe it will just be left here. Well, in any case, despite the fact that it was very thick and a little over 3 feet high, I decided to clamber over it so that I could continue on the same path. Further ahead, I could see a long row of trees. What could possibly be on the other side? Ah, a train track in the middle of the woods. I hadn't heard any trains going by. I bet it's a really good train ride though, being able to see this natural environment on either side of the train for many miles. I stepped over the track and carried on into the woods on the other side. A few moments later, I could hear a noise which made me stop. There was a rustling coming from the bushes ahead of me. Suddenly, a fox appeared. It was a lovely colour, brown and white all over, with a white tip on its tail. The fox watched me to see what I was going to do, so I stayed quite still as I didn't want to scare him. He must have decided that I wasn't a threat, because he casually trotted off and then disappeared into the distance. The undergrowth was starting to clear, and the trees were now much further apart from each other. Some of them were covered in moss, which gave a glowing shade of green in the sunlight. About another mile through the woods, as the trees opened up, I came to an area that was quite vast. I was much higher up than I'd realized. To the left, I could see a magnificent view over the valley, and in the distance there were small trees with a road running through the middle of them. I could also see cars on the road, shining in the sunlight. Near the bottom of the valley, part of a river was just about in view. This seemed like an ideal place to visit, so I scrambled down the hill, past lots of bushes and patches of undergrowth, really hoping that there would be a pathway along the riverside. When I reached the river, there was a pathway running beside it, which was easily wide enough for me to walk along. The sun was glinting on the water and looked quite mesmerizing. It was quite a wide river, probably about 100 meters across. I could see fish of all different colors slowly swimming around, and there were fishermen on the other side, sitting in the shade of the trees. As I walked along the path, I came across a flock of ducks, with the little ones following their mother. She entered the water, hoping they would follow her. The last little duckling tripped on the ground but soon recovered and joined the others as they swam off so calmly and effortlessly. As I walked further along by the riverside, looking into the woods, I could see a pathway leading up and a bridge at the end of it. The bridge looked like it was quite old and in need of repair. It was impossible to walk up to it because the pathway was so overgrown. I wonder where it leads to. It must have been a useful route at some time in the past to warrant building a bridge there, but now it looks like it hasn't been used for very many years. So I carried on walking beside the river for a while. About another mile down, the woods had a large opening, revealing a fairly steep pathway leading to an old wooden building, so I thought I'd go take a look. Near the top, the wooden building looked like it hadn't been visited by anyone for some time. The front door was off its hinges and lying on the floor a few meters away, so I took a peek inside. There were lots of cobwebs and broken hazelnuts everywhere. No doubt the squirrels have been in here at some point. Then I heard a cheeping noise. It was coming from the corner of the building, where there was a bird's nest with lots of hungry mouths looking up, so I left as soon as possible, as their mother probably wouldn't be too far away. I continued following the track through the trees for half a mile and thought to have a rest. After a few minutes of sitting quietly, I heard a rustling nearby. There were several deer that walked up towards me and then stopped just a few meters away to graze on the leaves and bracken, but they hadn't seen me. I felt quite privileged to see them so close up. Their coats were shining in the dappled sunlight, which revealed them in all their beauty. I watched them for a few minutes, but then they noticed me and quickly disappeared. After my rest, I carried on for a couple of miles, and what I saw next quite surprised me. I'd come to a large lake. There were people enjoying swimming, some sailing in small boats, and some diving in from a great height at the other end. I continued to follow the track around and past the lake and came across some blackberry bushes. The blackberries were so big and juicy, and lots of them too. I popped a couple in my mouth. They were delicious. I must have eaten well over a dozen of them. They made me think of blackberry and apple pie. It was a shame that I didn't have a container to take some home with me. Well, never mind. I'll leave some for the next person that finds them. Moving further along the track, I came to a field with some horses. As soon as they noticed me, they came up to the fence where I stood. As I stroked them, I could sense the strength and calm of these large animals. They appeared so very friendly, I could see why people get so attached to them. After another 30 minutes of following the track ended, and there was a small dirt road in front of me. I wasn't quite sure where to go now. I must have looked a bit disorientated as an elderly couple stopped and asked if I was lost. Luckily for me, they gave me a lift. I was very grateful, as it would have been a long walk back. I must have walked for many miles that day. I was in a world of my own out there and didn't realise how far I'd gone. I thanked them for the ride as they dropped me off by my car, and then headed on home. It had been a very enjoyable and relaxing day. I'll have to go out there again sometime and explore some more to see what else I can discover in the woods.